Today, I'm going to go through a lot of the work that's been being done on the overall LitCraft Metaverse financial ecosystem. I describe it that way because the main focus that I think a lot of that drives a lot of what we're going to be doing as a company, both Devvio and then the LitCraft effort, is driven by this financial ecosystem. It underlies a lot of what we're doing, in not just the gaming side of the business and the NFT side of the business, but where we're headed overall, what we're doing with the Legion, and even the ESG side of the business, and where we're going longer term with the bigger vision of what the company is doing. So, again, kind of underlying everything is the high level view that financial ecosystems are what are going to win the metaverse game. And so, I think even companies as big as Meta and Facebook that are looking to drive metaverse applications, all the way down to all of the blockchain gaming companies, but everything that's really involved in metaverse, as kind of a big category. I would argue that financial ecosystems really are going to be the key, kind of piece to what drive the biggest winners. That there's going to be companies that create just games, and are successful. And there's a lot of room in the video game industry for lots of different games, and blockchain gaming and play to earn, play to own are big categories of kind of, what's coming up. So there's going to be a lot of companies that are successful, but the big winners in the space are going to be ones that really drive financial ecosystems. And if you take a step back, I think a lot of this kind of makes sense because, a lot of what's driving play to earn and play to own games and is driving big sections of the blockchain space and the crypto space right now comes from kind of the core underlying needs that blockchain addressed, which is asset ownership and solving the double spend problem and things like that. And so if you kind of play it forward and you see why these areas are, or you see that these areas are getting traction, and you take a step back and you say why, right? It's because it's kind of the merging of those underlying concepts that drove the entire blockchain space into kind of applications that it's using. So it makes sense that the overall financial ecosystem, the asset ownership parts of what is driving everything in the blockchain space really is also going to drive this kind of new Web3 type of interaction. So it's kind of obvious to me when you think about it that way, but it's also, I think, not the main emphasis that a lot of what's being kind of described in the blockchain and gaming space. That a lot of the blockchain gaming space is, I think, making kind of traditional mistakes that the game industry has already lived through, like spending a lot of money on a single game. So this is where I think we're, aimed, is really not just creating the game, not just creating NFTs, not creating artwork that you're going to sell, but creating everything that goes into an entire ecosystem. The underlying technology, high speed, high throughput, low cost, ease of integration that you can bring many different applications and asset types into, the tools that you can use to view them, like our web app, our web wallet app, and things like Glass Block, and then Exchange. All those tools will really drive this overall ecosystem. So just starting at a high level, the things that really are kind of the foundation for how we're driving the ecosystem is there's a currency, called heptals. And that currency can be used to create items of value, or it can be further invested, for example, in businesses to create additional heptal revenue. So it's a currency. I kind of think of it sometimes almost like currency in a country, right? It's its own separate thing. It's not a floating value currency. It's really kind of more pegged to effort, is the way to think of it. But if you have a country that has its own currency, then it becomes exchange rates into other countries' currencies. So heptals, I think, will have those kind of exchange rates, that type of thing. So that's what it is, kind of fundamentally. And then a lot of the early days of crypto games has used balanced issuances. The games like Axie Infinity thought of issuances versus sinks. And we have our own syncs. There's, our lit pets. There's the upcoming lit squad characters, which I'm excited about. There's a lot of room to really kind of grow a lot of value there. There's the new guild concepts. I'll describe more in detail. There's our PvP concepts where you can, stake some heptals against other players, and then the winner takes the majority. But the portion that the winner doesn't get, is a sink, right? So there's those kinds of balance. But if you design an overall game, around those concepts, then you're set up where it works while you're growing, but at a point where you stop growing, then the whole thing falls apart. So really what you need is an economy that has more flow around it. And the reason I use kind of a country example is, that's what this really is kind of designed to be, is an economy that has a lot of flow with many different people doing many different things, where each person, is doing things that are relevant to another person. And then you create the mechanisms like glass block where they can transfer value and assets. And that then you get that kind of flow economy. And so we're designing the economy to not just be something that works where you're growing. And that's, I think, the biggest mistake that traditional play to earn games have been making. We've designed it to grow into something that really has this flow, and also which then ties in many different efforts, not even just games. It expands to a lot more than just NFT artwork in games. Another concept is that businesses emulate real world economic concepts. I like the idea in general that people that play our games and get involved in the ecosystem actually learn entrepreneurship and learn a lot of the concepts that go into building real businesses. There's other things that you want to drive, like removing too much bot influence. I think or really I would say unfair bot influence. There's places where bots have a role in what we're doing, just like bots having a role in trading systems and other real world concepts. But we want to make sure that when people are playing, they're not competing against bots in an unfair way. And a lot of that comes down, it's kind of a whack-a-mole game trying to really kind of prevent bots. A lot of what really is most effective in doing this is the design of the system, so that bots can't do things that they're not supposed to, but allow bots to do things that they're allowed to. And then, one of the big points then is that we'll integrate, with many other real world ecosystems. So a big part of what the overall ecosystem foundation is designed around is not just we create some games and there's some items in it and then there's some flow between those items. It's more that, we've created these easy to integrate, systems, using our RESTful API. So game developers can almost in a trivial way tie their game into our ecosystem and have, aspects of their gameplay lead to assets that tie into this overall ecosystem in a very easy way. And so you can start to bring in many other, games, but then you can also do a lot more. You can start to have the DevX exchange tie in with other, crypto assets and other, game assets. But then you can also expand even further and get into strategic business partnerships, ESG partnerships. I was, at the rock climbing gym recently, and I asked, how someone's climbing is going, and he's like, "Yeah, it's okay. Kind of tweak my finger, but I don't get paid for it, so it's fine." And I thought, well, maybe in the future you could get paid for it, right? Put a relationship in place where you do some tracking where you can verify it, but if you climb a certain number of routes, then you get assets that you can trade and sell in the ecosystem. So you could tie it in with going to movie theaters, going to a McDonald's, going anywhere. So the ecosystem again is much more than just NFTs and games. And at Devvio, we've been calling it kind of our NFT gaming business, but really I think I'm going to start referring to it more as our metaverse business. Not just I'm not a big fan of jumping into kind of hype and terminology and everything, but I do want to make the point that it is a bigger concept that we're pushing. It's not just NFTs and games. We're creating a financial ecosystem that's going to more and more tie into the real world with really powerful tools that are scalable, that can become global level tools that drive a lot of financial interactions beyond just virtual NFTs. It becomes more and more representations of human endeavor, representations digital representations of physical assets, things like that. So we'll integrate more and more of these real world items and effort into the metaverse financial ecosystem over time. And the vision is a big vision. And again, you look at a company like Meta and what they're doing. And again, I think this is the way to really crack the nut of what they're doing. And it seems like they're taking an approach where they're just spending a lot of money and a lot of it's being wasted, and there's a lot of criticism, but they're sticking to their guns. And I like that, myself. They have a vision and they're pushing forward, in that vision. Our approach, I think, is a little bit more surgical, a little bit more precise. It's what you have to do when you're a startup, and that's why startups can win in big ways, is by pushing in intelligent ways and focusing on the right things and having insights that go into these big systems. So a couple other examples of the real world integration. One is Lit Legion. That's a big part of kind of where we're headed. So Lit Legion lets you interact and do tasks, real world tasks, like retweet a tweet or, take part in a survey, or it could even be, go to a physical location, like I said, over time, those types of things. A big part of Lit Legion is community growth and all the community interactions. One of the great things about Devvio and LitCraft is our community. And so having, an increased kind of technological foundation for our community growth, I think is going to be compelling, because we're starting with just a great group of folks that really believe in what we're doing and has a great vibe to it. So that's going to be fun. And then a lot of the interactions in Lit Legion are social media, and then it also ties in with kind of our multi-level marketing strategy, where people can make introductions, and that ties in with guilds as well. So my point in this slide, in this presentation, like Lit Legion, we could do an entire separate presentation about, but the types of things that you do in Lit Legion lead to assets that then tie into this ecosystem. And one of the things that I think that is clever, that has kind of come out in the business, the virtual business growth, is the tie-in to Lit Legion. So a big part of your revenue when you're creating a business, your heptal revenue when you're creating a business, relies on a variety of expenses. And one of those big expenses categories is marketing. Well, you get marketing points from real world marketing in Lit Legion. So the end result then is that in order to make heptals in a business, you don't have to do marketing. Just like in real life, you don't have to market a business, but you need to make your business successful and to grow it to its potential. And so in order to get those points, you have to get points either through your own actions of spreading the word in the real world, or buying those points of somebody else who spread the word in the real world. And that kind of creates a way that people in the real world who like doing social media stuff can tie into the ecosystem and then sell their items on Glassblock to somebody else who likes to just mine and then wants to build a mining business, enjoys that Minecraft type of interaction, and then needs marketing points, doesn't like to do social media, so buys those points from somebody else. So that's a good example of where kind of the real world integration ties into the ecosystem that we're developing. And again, that's going to happen more and more. And then long term, we have really the bigger vision of what Devvio has been doing, the whole time, and what LitCraft represents, as well as a kind of metaverse, universe, is this, the philosophies that underlie, what the whole point of why we started designing things. The idea is that people can control their own value, that anybody can get the resources they need to fulfill their own personal potential, that anybody of any race or any socioeconomic class can get the resources they need to fulfill their potential. Things like that, I think, are really the power of what blockchain represents, and why this is a worthy kind of effort in one's life. And so that also, those concepts also tie into this real world integration. And so we'll have things that more and more become, gig economy. Lit Legion and the tasks there can more and more, turn into those gig economy concepts. We'll have real world assets that tie into the ecosystem. They could be, a tie-in with a loyalty point, or it could be, a car title, things like that. So more and more we'll have, concepts like that. A big emphasis at Devvio, obviously, is our ESG efforts. I envision us partnering with DevStream, to bring ESG assets into this overall ecosystem. And it's not just going to be ESG assets that then you sell on Glassblock and that's it. Like, it's going to be, again, we're creating all of the tools and the ecosystem, the financial ecosystem, flow, that you can do more and more with it, right? So you can have people that take on ESG tasks, to earn ESG assets, that then you could sell on Glassblock, and you can create more value out of those assets by tying them into all of the growth that you've had in all of the other areas, through these kind of mechanisms where you share value across different assets in different ways. So, and as I described, you can expand into even just physical locations, and there's a lot of other strategic partnerships. So especially when you look at strategic partnerships, and then the ongoing kind of game partnerships and things like that, this overall philosophy is driving, I think, a lot of where Devvio is going to be going in our overall business, not just what we've been, again, calling our NFT gaming business. So then, kind of driving in, or delving into a little bit more of kind of the specifics of the ecosystem. Everything up to this point has been kind of the high level philosophy and how it ties in with Devvio's kind of growth and why we're doing it. So now you start to look at, how does an ecosystem like this work? So a big part of it, especially as you're starting, is, play to own. So you have fun. We can build a big community of gamers and players and people that want to, spend time earning, and owning assets. And then that'll drive, I think, a lot of the ecosystem that, again, you can start to tie in more and more of the real world concepts into. But starting out, it really is kind of focused more around games. And so a big part of what you want to do then is you don't undercut users' ability to earn in the game. So this is a different business model for games than has existed in the past. Business models in the gaming industry in the past have been things like just buy the game, to start, back in the early days of Myst, and that was kind of driven with CD-ROMs. And even before that, just buying, games at a store. And you just install the game. And then there's advertising models, of course. A big, business model now is around like prestige, and you have games that are free to play, and then but you buy skins, or you buy other things that kind of show prestige in the game. And a lot of those games are kind of built around the similar philosophy. You build this big community that's playing, and then you kind of leverage ways to make money into it. Well, in our case, the ecosystem driver, with this new business model in the video game industry, users themselves, are able to create, those areas of value and then monetize it. So it's a different model. And if you're going to build a game this way, you have to make sure that you stick to it and you don't undercut, people's, ways to make money. And therefore, a big part of our growth is largely going to be driven by the perception of players to exit to fiat. So that's an important thing. Again, kind of a fundamental driver that we have to be keeping in mind. Another of the ecosystem drivers will be the types of things I've been describing, the real world integrations. A lot of, the ability for this to succeed is the coordination of complexity. So there's actually been a pretty big effort going through and figuring out an infrastructure and a design that you can coordinate a lot of different types of complexity and a lot of different types of interactions. And that's really what an ecosystem is, especially a financial ecosystem in the real world, right? And we're kind of mimicking a lot of that. Another thing that is a driver is that you're creating many different ways to play and earn. And the ecosystem then associates, all of those different ways to play and earn and all the different efforts. You also have to have the tools to make it all work. So we have an amazing, bit of technology in Glassblock. We have our marketplace, the wallet, the exchange. I think is going to become a big part of, kind of the growth here. And then finally, a lot of what drives us is the traditional game monetization, power-ups, advertising, skins, those types of things, but, letting users, earn those monetization rather than the game developer. In terms of revenue model, kind of again, foundational concept, the way that Axie Infinity made most of its money was on royalties on its marketplace. So we're planning the same thing. Devvio is going to earn, based on glass block royalties. LitCraft is one effort, that will fit into this overall ecosystem. And LitCraft itself will have kind of an expanding, growing ecosystem, and it will earn through the Genesis sales, is what I'm envisioning. And the Genesis sales complement rather than compete. So they kind of spur new areas, and then they turn into items that then people can craft. So a good example of that is our Genesis lit pets. We sold, the Genesis lit pets to start, and then now people can craft lit pets. And so it creates kind of some higher end items. But then also, we aren't selling Genesis lit pets anymore now that people are creating and selling their own, creating their own lit pets and then selling their previously, purchased Genesis lit pets. And then players earn through the various game mechanics, selling power-ups, advertising, all the ways that you can monetize a game. And then there's also, token value. There's both the token, not finalized on that name yet. It was Quint before, but Quint was already taken. So we still have to kind of finalize that. And then the Devvio token. And you can tie those into this overall financial ecosystem as well. And Taupe, for example, will be used to stake to create guilds, and guilds are a powerful concept for making revenue in the game. So a lot of the design around kind of the different complexities, the different games that we're bringing in, the different items, has all been a lot of different moving parts, and a big part of kind of the overall financial ecosystem design has been, seeing how all those parts come together, seeing what all the various parts are. So some of these slides then coming up are just, the summaries then of kind of how the design has been coming. So where do you actually create actual value in the ecosystem? So there's things like lit pets, which are NFTs. There's collectibles, which are like the Genesis lit pets, or even lit pets that are created. There's the Lit Legion avatars, so the Lit Squad concepts. And then there's our land as well. A lot of those are driven around scarcity, with collectible concepts. But there's also the utility, of those. There's knowledge that creates ecosystem value. So there's gamers that will learn how to build businesses. In the gameplay, there's knowledge of specific games themselves. Another concept that's pretty compelling. And again, we're mirroring a lot of real world concepts. So there's trade secrets, for example, where you actually have a trade secret in the game. You know how to create a recipe of a high level food item, just like in real life. The Colonel secret recipe, or the recipe for Coca-Cola. There'll be equivalents of that. I'm curious to see how that kind of evolves too, because I think it'll evolve like it has in the real world. You have value, and you don't want to share it, and because it is a secret, and if it gets out, then it kind of lessens your value. So I think that concept will hold, in this overall financial ecosystem. There's game utility. So again, I'm talking about specific, NFTs or specific tokens. So game enhancements, power ups. So like a game like Candy Crush Saga has, power ups where you blow away a row, or you get rid of a tile, or things like that. So those are items in the ecosystem that will create value as well. And again, a lot of this starts with game ecosystem. A lot of the ecosystem value is going to be real world assets over time, but this is kind of the beginnings of it, where it's kind of the gaming ecosystem. Then there's prestige, which largely is things like avatars, skins, animations. That drives a lot of the biggest games in the world right now. And that'll be a big part of what we do as well. So for example, you'll be able to buy skins or animations for your lit pets in the Heptone battles. A lot of the ecosystem value is just fun too. There's people that are going to come in and they're just going to want to have fun, and they'll be buyers of things like power-ups that other people are crafting. A big part of the ecosystem value is our PvP system that we're creating, where people will be able to play against each other. And again, once you get a lot of people playing in PvP, then that creates the foundation for creating a lot of this economic flow. The community that we're creating with Lit Legion and in general in the community and the ecosystem. There's specific items that you can use to build virtual items, build a virtual house, that kind of thing. And then, the long-term humanitarian goals, again, are a big part of the main point when you're talking about this ecosystem value. So you ultimately get to things where you're representing human endeavor, or you're representing, digital or physical assets, digital representations of physical assets, things like that. Um, this is one of the most important slides as we're getting going. These are all the different ways to earn, and this is a lot of the complexity of how do you make all of these things work together. So one of the ways to earn is just playing, right? You come in and you play, you grind, or you develop expertise. You want to have both of those concepts create value. So you have component tokens where you just play and you earn things, and then those things can be crafted into more and more complex things. But you also have expertise tokens. If you're playing even a simple game like solitaire, you really get good at it. You can um, as you play solitaire for a while, and I've had periods where I've kind of gotten into solitaire, so I know this, right? You kind of get the flow of it and the game and the instincts of how to do stuff, and you get quicker, and you just see stuff quicker. So you get to where you clear a level in under so you clear a deck in a traditional solitaire move three cards type of game. Where you can clear it in under 2.5 minutes, for example. And if you can clear it under 2.5 minutes, you get an expertise token, right? And so you want where people have this ability to really get expertise in games, or you really get good at FPS, or you hit some big milestones in our heptode battles, right? You get some other tokens. And then there's the business tokens, which tie in a lot of the different types of gameplay into how people are running their businesses. And businesses, I'll go into a lot more detail, are a lot of how you create the synergy between different people's efforts. And then we'll also have cross game tokens where you craft, for example, an engine in experience that then you can use in a racing game, that kind of thing. Obviously in the crypto and blockchain space, there's collectibles and scarcity, and there's the hope that just like baseball cards, that those can go up in value and really become kind of rare items that other people want. You can be able to sell them on glass block. You can earn just by crafting. Take other people's tokens, craft them into more and more complex things. It's kind of like a manufacturer in real life, and so and again, some of that ties in with things like trade secrets. You can also craft things where you start to get automation that makes your crafting itself easier. So you can put money into making your kind of crafting business, which isn't a business in the game, but it is kind of the real world business that you're running. And then you can craft things that have specific value, like power ups that you can sell, or advertising tokens you'll be able to craft and sell into other things. So that's down here is it kind of ties in with crafting. But another category is advertising. So you can spend your time getting the pieces that you need to put advertising tokens out, and that could include things like needing to have marketing effort that drives the whole visibility around the whole ecosystem. In order to create ads, then you could sell to advertisers that want to sell into that. Another way you can make money in the ecosystem is through businesses. So you can get daily heptile revenue by creating businesses. And again, I'll go into more detail on businesses. You can create business leveling tokens. Every time you create revenue, you get business leveling tokens, and you can sell those. And then some businesses actually create assets, and businesses create demand for all the items across the various different ways you can earn. And it's also fun because it mirrors real world. Has the marketing emphasis I was describing earlier that I think is a compelling concept in it. And then you can have increasing business scope in your businesses. I'll go into that in more detail as well. Another concept is guilds. A lot of what's driven other crypto games is the idea that bigger entities come in, spend upfront costs, players join the guilds, and then those players can earn more by joining the guild. And so we've got that concept, and I'll go into that in more detail. But you can make passive revenue just so this slide is ways to earn. You can make passive revenue just by creating a guild and getting people to sign up. And this will tie in with our multi-level marketing. Another way to earn is by creating items that are prestige, avatar skins, animations, sell them to other players, advertising I described. You can exchange with crypto tokens, like our token. You can earn through PvP, so you can earn just by playing other people and getting good at games, and then collecting rewards from success in PvP. And a lot of people will like that. And then it also drives a lot of the value that other people are crafting that makes you want to get better at that. And then you can earn in Lit Legion. Lit Legion, you can do tasks. the multi-level marketing. You can do some other specific ways that you can level up. You create avatars. It's almost like an RPG game, role-playing game, where you get more and more items that then let you earn daily based on how you've leveled up your character in Lit Legion. There's going to be a collectible bingo that ties in with collectibles that you earn based on that drives value and the desire to get more items. So, like, oh God, if I only had that middle square that was like a Genesis lit pet, I could collect more ways in Lit Legion, and the things you can collect can be heptals, but it also can be other like kind of rare items and stuff. And then Lit Legion also drives social media efforts, so you can, again, this is the ways to earn. You can take your own social media efforts, get tokens, and sell those in Glass Block. So I spent a good chunk of time on this slide, but again, it's an important slide. These are all the things that users will come in and say, like, what do I want to do? And it's pretty compelling because a lot of these things are things that some people want to do, but other people don't. Some people don't care about social media. Some people, don't care about building a business. They just want a game, right? Some people like the idea of creating these ad tokens and can even go out and sell them directly themselves, right? So it creates a lot of initial areas where people can earn that'll spawn a lot of the growth and the ecosystem. Another kind of resulting summary then is, the items of value, another way to look at the value in the ecosystem. So we have our Genesis items with lit pets that you can craft themselves, a new upcoming artifact system. I'm not going to go into that too much detail, but there's a kind of a cool artifact system coming up. We've got tons of artwork in Lit Squad. We've got thousands of different clothing items and lots of different bases I'll show in a minute. Again, you could have building materials that you use to build things, all the business effort tokens. So again, I'm putting this more in terms of the tokens. Like, you actually, as you generate revenue in a business, you create tokens that you use to level up your businesses. Well, those are tokens that you can, buy and sell. Well, those are the business leveling tokens, and the business effort tokens. Like, you play a game and you create, the equivalent of like legal points, that are used in businesses. Expertise tokens I described, rare food recipes, automation items. That's another category where you can craft and spend money to automate things that make, gameplay better over time. Another big category of items that's coming up is knowledge scrolls. So you'll be able to craft and collect items that give you knowledge within the game, like recipes of how to create other things, like rare recipes, or just getting knowledge of how to do things. And you can sell the scrolls to other people that want to, get the knowledge, and they'll be fun to open because you open one of the scrolls up and then you find out that, like, oh, it's a recipe for something I've been wanting to get, that kind of thing. Tools, in that are used for further crafting. There's the deeper mind items is a new item. Adverts for advertising, you actually craft those and advertisers will buy them to get access to our community to advertise. You can actually craft and create UI enhancements. So you can create, for example, items that automatically separate items in your inventory into places that you want. So you'll be able to craft that as an item, sell it to somebody else, they'll be able to use it and then increase their efficiency in the game. Game enhancements themselves and game power-ups, like the bombs in a match 3 game. There's content itself. So we have a lot of new content that's coming up, and we've had a lot of work over this year, creating content, and then the skins and animations. So we have over 500 tokens right now. With the new ecosystem, there's 1,000+ new tokens coming in. We've got 230 lit pets. We've got limitless lit squad. I mean, billions, trillions, quadrillions of combinations of lit squad. So that's gonna be a really fun area. Lots of different ways to earn, and that'll increase over time. And then we've got over 20+ games themselves, and everything. So there's a lot of just kind of material value already, designed into the game. And then one of the big, then punchline for all of that is, well, what are the fiat off ramps? So and this is what players will want to see. So you can list items in Glass Block. You can choose in your items that you're selling, you can sell them for fiat only. Some items, I think, things that are more things like skins or animations, adverts themselves, those will innately be fiat only. You can also have tote purchases. You can use the tote purchases to stake for guilds and increase your revenue. Guilds give you a percentage increase in revenue. You can sell items of value. Then there's things like advertising that'll create a natural fiat off ramp. And then you can sell heptals themselves for fiat on glass block or in the exchange. There may not be a market for heptals. I think it's okay if there's not, because again, you can think of it as a country's currency. Like if you're living in Mexico, and there's been times in Mexico where pesos don't have a lot of value outside of Mexico, but they're still the currency within the country. But then there's exchange rates, and depending on how big the ecosystem grows, there's exchange rates into other things of value, which is indicative of selling items on glass block. Okay, so let's jump into businesses, because businesses are a big concept in Lit Legion. And again, they coordinate a lot of people's various efforts. So with businesses, you can earn daily revenue, and it allows you to have specialization, focus on the things that you want to focus on, right? And even if that's just playing solitaire, right? You can have a business around just when I say businesses, I'm talking about the virtual businesses that are actually implemented in the Nesperience game. So you can create, a business that you sell the items that you've created by playing or earning or crafting or whatever else. A business starts as a personal business where it's very easy to just play solitaire, sell the items, get some heptals, maybe over time sell the heptals or buy something or craft something that you can sell on glass block. But it's really easy to start. But you can transition businesses to a scalable business. So when you transition to a scalable business, then what you're doing is you're jumping into almost a game on its own. The business's concept is a game, kind of a simulation game that a lot of people like that type of game. And the businesses themselves level up. And so you can grow your business from a level 1, farming business up to a level 10 farming business, for example. And as the businesses level up, they become more complex. They have more requirements. A lot of these requirements mirror real world concepts. And then the businesses can earn more. But just like a real world business, you have to put effort into it. So businesses are unprofitable to start, and you got to put time and effort until they become profitable. Businesses also then drive demand for many other ecosystem items. So if you play solitaire, for example, you earn legal points that turns into what are called legiscent. And then, when you're running a business, you have legal needs. And so you have legiscent that comes into your business, needs to create revenue that day. Maybe you don't want to, your focus is building your business. You don't want to become a legal expert, right? Just like in real world. In this analogy, then you don't want to play solitaire. So you get somebody else to play solitaire, and then you buy their effort for your business, and then you make more money by, getting those points. So it's a pretty, clever, I think, system to drive a lot of interactions between different people. And then businesses, because you're generating revenue, really that's creating simulated sales. We want to keep those simulated sales at a lesser price than what you would sell on glass block. I think a lot of items that you would sell in your business and create revenue, depending on how the ecosystem grows, there's a lot of times where you'll be able to make more money on glass block, or you'll be able to buy things on glass block and through arbitrage make more money in your business because you've built efficiency in your business. And so over time, businesses are going to become more and more built around creating goods rather than creating heptal revenue. It's become less and less around simulation. But in the beginning, you have this is how we're kind of seeding the market with businesses and creating demand for all of the various items. But as it transitions, businesses then become about creating items. Like you can have a foundry business that takes core base metals and turns them into base components that can be then turned into more and more complicated magical and electronic components, that kind of thing. So it's designed to have a path of transition from kind of the initial issuance and sinks model into the circular economy model. So businesses are designed to evolve themselves. So looking at how businesses grow then, initial businesses are gig businesses. Like I said, you just put effort in and then you can sell items simply. To grow a scalable business, you register the business. There's a cost with registering the business, just like in the real world. Like you have to register your business to really get it going. And then businesses have expenses. And it takes time to grow to profitability. Businesses level up in revenue and complexity. Businesses literally level up from level 1 up to level 10. You generate your points in order to level up by creating revenue. And so, you can't shortcut how long it takes to create a business, but you also can sell your business after you've built it, and so that's a compelling concept, just like in the real world. um, Large emphasis for revenue generation is in marketing tokens, which are called Opsonot, which are earned by real world marketing efforts. I described this earlier, and I'm just pointing out again here. This is a compelling concept, because what it'll end up being is a lot of the revenue that you create in building a business comes from the need of Opsonot, and Opsonot is created by creating awareness for the ecosystem into the real world. This drives our user base and drives more players. So if you want to make money in this ecosystem, you got to ultimately be letting more people know about it, which makes the ecosystem grow. So tying in that actual mechanic, I think, is a powerful concept. The business requirements come from many different areas. I'll show some more slides on that in a second. Again, some businesses generate items instead of heptals, and that'll become more and more commonplace as we transition to more of a ecosystem. Again, you can sell your business, and then all of the businesses and revenue that you create, you can get a percentage increase if you're doing it as part of a guild. And guilds have upfront costs, including staking of the token. Okay, so here's some business profitability examples. And there's really kind of in detail spreadsheets, and it was like designing these businesses actually was a lot like, I'm an experienced entrepreneur. It was a lot like building a real world business plan and doing your kind of presentation and financials and everything. Is a very similar process. So some businesses can get to profitability more quickly, but they have lower overall revenue earning potential. So that the max daily revenue is less for mining than is for farming, but you can get to that business profitability more quickly. So it takes about 50 days once you upgrade your business into a scalable business, and you make it a scalable business. Then you start to have expenses associated with your growth, and as you start leveling up, those expenses increase, and it takes a while before you get to profitability, just like a real world business. Ultimately, by the time you get to a level 10 business, it'll take you 439 days, but you're profitable during that time, right? So you're making money and you're just making your business better. So that's more fun. You got to do the work to kind of get to that profitability point. Farming takes more time. A little bit higher revenue, and you can get to that higher revenue earlier. So mining is kind of a quick bang for the buck. Farming is kind of middle level business. The equipment business is a lot more work to get the items, a lot more work and more time to get to profitability, but higher earning potential and a higher endpoint. But it takes more time to get to the higher endpoint. So this is kind of how businesses are designed to grow over time at a high level, working towards profitability. Here's an example of, this is a level 10 equipment business. This is what your expenses, generally are needed. So you'll have, in order to create your daily revenue, you'll have to get a bunch of Gion. Just like the real world, energy drives a lot of the ecosystem, and there's a whole Gion or energy in the LitCraft universe. Gion is the energy world, or is the name for energy. And there's items that you craft that create Gion, and then people can make a living out of just crafting Gion converters. So you have a lot of Gion expenses. A big chunk of your revenue is marketing, and again, in order to drive your revenue, marketing really, in essence, kind of if you don't spend your marketing, it halves about your revenue potential. So marketing as a big component is important. Another thing is you have lit pets. So a level 10 equipment business, these expenses are food expenses, for your lit pets, and you can build a whole business around creating food. And there's intellectual property and trade secrets around food, so kind of a neat system there. But lit pets really are kind of employees in your business, and lit pets have characteristics. So you'll have different roles that you need to fit into your business. So you'll have, workers that, maybe have dexterity as a high requirement. So lit pets have dozens of characteristics. So you have to find lit pets that fit the roles. And at this level business, I think it was, it's about 100 lit pets, 100 employees, to be creating this level of revenue. You have expenses for, kind of doing your magical crafting for the products. tech dev, magic dev. You have HR expenses after you get that many employees. You have accounting expenses, sales expenses, biz dev, legal, admin, right? All of these are items that other players can build their business, right? Again, in the real world, entrepreneurs a lot of times learn a lot about legal, but at the end of the day, you don't become, you don't get, bar certified, and you hire your lawyers, right? This is kind of analogous here. So to get your legal points, there will be other people that do the work. It becomes too much to do yourself, which is again a big part of the point of the flow in the ecosystem. Daily revenue generation. This is how it works. You generate revenue daily. You can generate revenue for up to 3 businesses each day. That might change. You can earn with up to 5 item categories of what you're selling in your business. So for example, if you have a mining business, you mine items, you convert them into processed items, and then you sell those in your business, and you indicate in the UI that you're selling those. Users can earn up to the max daily revenue each day. Full marketing spend changes your max daily revenue from 50% of that potential up to 100%. You also have to fulfill all of the requirements for generating the daily revenue. So if you're running a real business at that point, and in order to run a real business, you have legal costs. This is a good example of what FTX didn't do. They didn't hire basic accountants, driving things. Like if you're running a real business, you have real expenses, real costs, and those represent, tokens in the ecosystem. And again, these tokens can turn into real world things. Like right now, you play solitaire to earn tokens. I imagine in the future, we might have lawyers that are involved in the system that create tokens through kind of real world legal aspects. And those are the legal tokens. And that's how it transitions over time. So all these things can transition into, again, kind of these real world items. And then there's different values for what the items are valued at. So there's kind of a base value. If you own land in a business, it increases the value. And then you have just kind of traditional game mechanics where, if you've done 10 straight days of checking in, you get that 33% bonus. You're not going to want to lose that. So you're going to want to keep checking in. That'll, create stickiness for the ecosystem. And then lit pets are the workers for the business. And then they require food, and there's a whole business economy around food. The current businesses we have: mining, farming, efficient crops. There's new food businesses coming up. There's new efficient is the lit term for manufacturing. So there's new manufacturing businesses coming up. There's businesses that produce produce items. The first business of that is the foundry, which creates kind of the base items. And then there's all of the service businesses. And then these are the kind of different, point systems that there's 5 different kind of categories of businesses that you earn points for leveling them up. So here's an example of kind of how a lot of this comes together. These are kind of the new games. So you have a solitaire game, the block toss game, our new Flappy game, word cross, Sudoku, just kind of traditional games. There's a tap basketball game, which is a very simple game, but it's a game that's like a game that I played a bunch in the past. And it's just kind of a simple game that you kind of get hooked on. The Mirror Dash is similar. Traditional kind of brick breaker game, just kind of a little simple game there. This is kind of a fun little game using a heptagon concept. And then there's all the Lit Legion stuff. So it's interesting kind of how these kind of come together. And it's, like the Sudoku game represents accounting. Like when you're doing accounting in the real world, you have your balance sheets, you have your, profit and loss, and all the numbers have to add up, right? And you have to get everything to line up. Well, I mean, that's kind of what Sudoku is, right? So it's kind of fitting that fits with accounting. And what you do is as you play Sudoku, you get econs. Econs is a LitCraft server token. It's not actually on chain. You craft it into a connaissant, and then a connaissant is what you use to fulfill your accounting requirements in the business, which was in the previous slide. And then if you solve a Sudoku puzzle in a very short amount of time, you get a connaissentium. Connaissentium represents expertise in that game, accounting expertise. And just like in the real world, like you get an accountant, you bring in the big guns sometimes when you run into a problem, and you bring in this, the expert at a big firm, and they know how to structure things where you ran into a problem, didn't think of things quite the right way. Well, what can you do now? Well, we patched past the tax year, so we need to get structure things in a new way. And a lot of times there's nothing you can do, right? So my point is there's expertise in these items in the real world. Well, these represent, in the analogy of playing the games, you get expertise as well, and it's fun from the game point of view. If you're really good at Sudoku and you can solve puzzles quickly, you can get these items, and then these items largely are used to craft gaming power-ups, for example, that kind of thing. So different tokens have different uses in the ecosystem. And then again, here you have Lit Legion that creates Obsonance, and that's a very important business token. And you get that token by spreading the word in the real world. I dive a little bit more into the games philosophy of the ecosystem. So a big part of the whole point of the ecosystem is that people can play. Like there'll be a lot of people that just want to come in and play, right? So you'll be able to play your favorite games and genres and earn. Like you like solitaire, you can come in and play solitaire. You like first-person shooter games, you'll be able to join and initially play our first-person shooter, but over time play multiple first-person shooters. So whatever you like to do, and some people are going to like a lot of people aren't gamers, but they can go jump into our ecosystem and they can earn points by doing social media. There's other gamers or there's other people that aren't interested in social media. They aren't interested in gaming, but they do like business, right? And they can come in and just buy and sell, or they're traders, right? Buy and sell items and just work on arbitrage, right? So there's whatever is kind of your thing, you'll be able to find a place for yourself in the ecosystem. As I've been describing, to grow beyond just games. The games have grinding. So a lot of games they're just fun to play, like solitaire. You play a few rounds before you go to bed each night. Over time that adds up, right? So that's what I mean by grinding, is just kind of playing a game. There's expertise in the games that you're rewarded for, but then there's a strategy. What's the strategy in our Heptone Battle game? There's a lot of strategy there, and then a lot of that is driven by getting the right assets. In that case, the lit pets that fulfill a specific strategy. There'll be cross game interactions is a really powerful concept. We could write a whole presentation around that. Games tie in with the businesses, kind of per that that last slide. Games also get you kind of fundamentally the components that you use for crafting, and then we're going to more and more tie into third-party games. So here's the games that we've already got. I described all of the new games a couple slides back. We also have kind of our initial games, a mining game that's like Minecraft. Farming is like Match 3, that's kind of like Candy Crush Saga. There's crops. There's lots of Match 3 games. There's our crops game, which is kind of a slide game. There's a bunch of new merge games in general. We've got a really nice merge game. Our players have spent a lot of time in merge. There's kind of a combination game where you combine to get magic, but you also can combine it. The Heptavia game is actually kind of a fun game in itself, where you combine different concepts to create more and more concepts and try to find out what they are. We have upcoming the building game, the FPS game, space shooter, and then all the Lit Legion work, which Lit Legion is kind of like a real world MMO, most massively multiplayer online game. So in terms of what types of gameplay you can do, one type is collecting. So again, you play the games, you can collect mine items, you can collect crafting components. There's lots of different things you can collect. And then you can just play games and collect the business efforts tokens. You could sell those items to other players, or you could sell them, through Glassblock, or you could, sell them in the kind of base gig business, or you could sell them in your growing business. Another type of gameplay is crafting. So you can craft more and more complex things, and some of the things are hard to get, and you might, again, use arbitrage. There's items that might be valuable to you that other people don't realize are valuable. They sell them cheap. You buy them on the, on the marketplace. And then you can craft things that make your own, gameplay easier. And crafting also, again, you're looking, like, the whole point of this presentation is I'm describing the whole ecosystem design. Like, crafting is a big part of that. Businesses drive a lot of need for different items to be combined. Crafting does as well. So crafting, you craft items that include, like this item might originally came from metals in the earth that somebody mined by playing the Minecraft game. Ultimately, the metals, just like in the real world, turn into these items. They go through a foundry, they get crafted into more and more complex components. Those components get combined into a final item. And different players will like different parts of that whole kind of crafting ecosystem. So here's, some examples of crafting. you can take different crops. These are collected items in the crops game, the farming game, the match 3 game. So if you take 50 placana, 50 xanthus, 50 simprith, and 50 palal, then you get a kakantal. A kakantal is a spice. The lit food ecosystem is really like there's a whole bit of lore around this as well. It's a nice system. It's a lot less destructive. It doesn't just take and destroy. There's no animal cruelty, things like that. And so in order to create, kind of a base item in the food ecosystem, you use each of the items from the farming game. Actually, a couple of these items are from the slide game for the Kakantal, but the PAB uses all the base items from the farming game. And then PAB is a base ingredient that's combined with these other PAB, types of items, Pabausch, Pabenth. So Pabausch is kind of a meaty type of, combination. So you take one PAB and one Pabausch. So there's 12 PABs, and then there's in total 12 other items. And so you can, have kind of a bready base that combines with PAB, a Pau Blanche base, a cheesy base, spicy, and then some of the spices. So like you create Concatal, that becomes one of the spices, and that's how you create a burrito. So I bet people didn't know that 12 PAB plus 5 Pabausch plus 3 Pabenth plus 1 Pau Blanche plus a Pabdath, Pabgina, Ginger, and Concatal. That's how you make a burrito. That's how the lit make burritos. Actually, that makes 12 burritos. Here's another crafting example. You can have items that have heptals as an ingredient that gives them a basis. The evolution stone, the evolution orb are complex items crafted from lots of mining and digging. So this is a relatively hard item to craft. This is a deep item in the mining. I mean, it's not super hard. You can craft it after you've dug through one full level, but you have to get your digging tool up to a level that you can do that. And then there's a basis in it as well. So that's how you create an evolve cube. So that's a relatively valuable item, especially because it has a basis in it. And then there's this progressor item is another example. It has you can use it to get insights into the results of base pets, of how they craft into lit pets. And so in order to create a progressor, you need an analytic page 147, a transmag 108, not to be confused with the transmag 112. I actually had the wrong item, and I thought that doesn't look right, and then I realized that I had a different transmag. Transmag are magical energy flow controls. There's magical energy storage. That's kind of like a capacitor, in electronics. There's housings, so there's these different items that combine into this final item. This final item has utility. So again, different people might want to create the different pieces and components for each of these, and it creates lots of flow for the ecosystem. And then another final example is you take the evolve cube that you crafted, you take a bunch of steel, and then you take the book 12 that in this crafting represents knowledge. And the book 12 is very hard to get. It's probably 50 hours of gameplay by one user to get to a book 12. And then you get a digging machine. And the digging machine is so valuable, uses these really high value components because it starts to create automation. And so there's players that are going to really get into the system, and they're going to say, I want to create caverners, and you can create multiple caverners. So every caverner, creates when you dig, creates more area that you dig with a single click. So there would be demand for players to create, multiple caverners. So this is an example of crafting. And the reason I'm going into some of the detail is I'm trying to, again, tease out and show how all of the different, efforts in the overall ecosystem work together, and where different people can have different specialties. Another important part of the ecosystem is our PvP. So initially we have our heptone battles where people can play in PvP. We've got our FPS, game coming out. And in that, you just battle, you use items that have value in the system, which are lit pets. Lit pets are crafted items that you craft from a bunch of other components, including base pets. And base pets, you have to level up using other base components. You have to get medicine and food and housing for the base pets, right? So ultimately, getting a lit pet is a fairly complicated thing. They have a basis themselves to create each lit pet. You have a lot of cost that goes into it. That cost is a dial that we can, turn in the overall ecosystem, function, as we grow. But then the lit pets have a lot of complexity themselves. They have a lot of different characteristics. They have their own Locust is called, their own magic specialty in the heptagen, which is the magical symbol for the LitCraft universe. And so they have therefore different powers. And so my point is that in PvP, to get good at it, there's a lot of different crafting and effort and work that goes into creating these lit pets from likely lots of different people, that then, for people that are interested in PvP, they need to buy those items in a lot of cases in order to be good at PvP. So the lit pet concept and how that drives, and that'll be true in the FPS as well. Lit pets will drive FPS play as well. So that drives a lot of the ecosystem, and a lot of players are going to just come in and they just want to compete, and they don't want to craft, they don't want to build businesses, they just want to play and earn just by playing player versus player. So this is an important part of the overall kind of ecosystem and the flow. Another concept that's compelling is just being able to stake heptals. So you have two people that want to play solitaire, they both stake some heptals, there's a fee associated for the game, but the winner of that game takes more of the heptals, and then you can work your way up through ladders, earn prestige, earn more. You could have weekly or monthly giveaways based on where you are in the ladder, that kind of thing. And so even just kind of simple games, you'll be able to compete in PvP. We've got work going on there that's coming along well, to get all of the PvP for things like the Heptone battles, as well as the the solitaire and Sudoku types of PvP. Lit Legion, in terms of gameplay, is a game itself. Lit Legion is designed to facilitate geometric growth, so we'll have lots of different players in Lit Legion as again kind of a real world MMO, where a lot of what they're doing is bringing in other players, and then that's the value you get, whether it's through social media interactions or just direct, like you bring in a player and you get a multi-level marketing code that gives you credit for bringing in that player. It also is a category that we can drive effort and growth in general. We could have tasks where people create artwork, and then Lit Legion as a game has an RPG, type of gameplay in it. It has the collectible bingo that I mentioned, so that'll drive value in the system for scarcity and rare items, and then it has the social media efforts. A lot of people like that, so you can do social media efforts and get paid to do it. I put these images; these are the base items. Every one of these has billions of different variations. You can change their colors, put a horn, have spots. There's a whole bunch of different faces. A lot of the artwork was done by Mike and Phil, amazing artists. Phil, really created so many different kind of facial characteristics that, the characters can have. They can have tentacle arms. Again, there's so many different variations. And then every one of these characters then can have thousands literally of different types of clothing that they can wear, and the clothing is the RPG part of the game. So we've got a ton of work that's gone into what's going to be the avatar system in Legion. I think it's going to be a fun game in its own. And then, guilds, again, a little bit more detail. There's going to be various guild levels, bronze, silver, gold. The idea of guilds is that you have maybe whales or groups that pay bigger upfront costs, and diamond guilds are going to be expensive, and you're going to have to buy a lot of tokens, for example, to stake against it, for example, that type of thing. And so you have guild owners that pay the upfront costs, but members that join the guild get a percentage increase. So let's say a guild, a member joins a guild and they would have made 1,000 heptals in a week. They'll get 1,500 heptals if they're in a diamond guild instead, and then the guild gets 500 heptals. So nothing is taken away from the members paid towards the guild. It's all bonuses. And so this is a way to drive in, to bring in whales and drive staking concepts and things like that. So I think the guilds concept is going to be really, really powerful, and it's a way to get passive revenue in the overall ecosystem, which a lot of folks in the crypto space look for. And then members will also be able to combine their resources. So they'll have a lot of community things. They'll have like guild competitions where people, guilds compete against each other, those types of things. So guilds is, I think, going to be a really important concept to where we're going. And it's what's driven a lot of growth in other other play to earn games. So that's, kind of a long-winded presentation, a lot of detail. I haven't really honed it down to kind of an investor level presentation, but I wanted to go through some detail of how the whole ecosystem, comes together. And with this design and with our technology and with our team, I feel like we can dominate the metaverse. I feel like, again, we're in very early innings of the entire crypto space. I think a lot of what's going to be driving metaverse applications and metaverse growth is going to be Web3 technologies, and that's even earlier, right? And so it's very early days. We have all of the technologies in place that you need. The marketplace, high speed, high throughput, cost effective, blockchain, easy to integrate with a RESTful API. We have the glass block marketplace operating in a really amazing way. It's just like it's such a pleasure to use. It's so seamless. It works like a Web2 application. We've got our IP. And again, we've got an amazing team, which is the foundation for everything we're doing at Devvio, which is why I think we're going to be successful. We also have video game expertise. A lot of people in the video game blockchain gaming space are making, again, the mistakes that have been made traditionally over decades in the traditional video game area. So the combination of kind of knowledge and team and technical capabilities and expertise, those are all the things that are going to be needed to really dominate this space. And I think we're well positioned to become a leader in this kind of overall effort. And again, if you take a step back, it's not just NFTs, it's not just games. This is an overall financial ecosystem that's going to be highly integrated with our everyday lives in the future, and that's Meta's vision as well. And again, I think this is the way to get there. And I think when you finally, importantly, a big piece is having overall design and infrastructure that can scale and bring in all this complexity into a single financial ecosystem where the financial ecosystem itself is going to be the key to success. So that's kind of the summary of everything. So thank you.